Hi, welcome to another episode of the Corporate Cowboys podcast. My name is Alex, as always, your host. Today's proof of life. It's Saturday. It's Saturday. It's officially the weekend, right? For most. And if you're working late or if you're working over the weekend or if you're working on yourself over the weekend, I mean, shit, the work's never over. It's one down, always one more to go. That's what an OG once told me. So, these 30-minute consults, as you know, are free and they are meant to help you, to assist you on your way to develop professionally, right? Today's question, I already read earlier, actually, like less than a minute ago. I read it right before starting this, and it's from r/career guidance. It's a short one, so there wasn't much reading, but there is some thinking, a lot of thinking, a lot of philosophy that's implicated, that's being requested here. The question is asking which profession is the most wholesome slash nicest people? Which profession has, you see, I read that wrong. I misread it. I'm over here thinking which profession is the most wholesome, but the answer is going to be the same. The question is asking which profession has the most wholesome slash nicest people. And my answer, just straight up to the point, to the throat, is going to be it depends, right? How about a legal answer, right? How about a lawyerly answer? Granted, you're not my client, right? So none of the content that we put across on the Corporate Cowboys podcast or on any of our media channels should be construed as such, right? Unless you engage us as a client, right? If you come to us as a client and then we assist you in your case matter, regardless, we aren't offering legal advice. We're offering you potential strategy. Potential strategy. Now, granted, this question really isn't asking for strategy. It's asking for insight. It's asking for information. And it's a good question to ask if you're a beginner, if you're a novice. There's nothing wrong with asking beginner questions. There is no such thing as a dumb question, only dumb people. And dumb people just ask questions when they have the capacity enough to want to learn. And then they aren't dumb anymore. But everybody starts off dumb along the line. Everybody along the line starts off dumb. Nothing wrong with that. No shame. No shame in that. You learn by trial and error. You learn through having experienced. You learn through hard knocks in some cases. And you are dumb no more. Hopefully. So the body of this, it's asking for advice. It's tagged or flared, whatever you call it, for advice. So it's still asking for advice. Maybe this person is, outside an industry looking in, trying to have a peek in and wondering whether or not they should enter a particular industry based on the type of person the industry attracts, right? Now, my response to that right off of the bat, it's going to be to evaluate yourself. Really analyze whether or not you attract wholesome and nice people, whether you are wholesome and nice. At least be nice, right? You could have ulterior motive. You could be a good person doing bad things. You could be a bad motherfucker doing great things. But you got to be nice about it. You have to be nice about it. There is always somebody bigger. There is always somebody badder. There is always somebody smarter, faster, more critical than you. There always will be. I don't consider myself the best. I consider myself better. Better than average. Better than most. But constantly better. The moment you put yourself on a pedestal as the best, that's when you're prone to getting knocked off. It's unfortunate, but I've seen it. Like I said, I speak it because I've seen it. If I haven't experienced something myself, it's because I've experienced it vicariously, having seen it. All right, the body for this, because I was going off on a rant there. The body for this is asking, or it's written, I'm looking for jobs that have usually very nice and sincere coworkers. I mean, whenever, I mean, I mean, whether a job is fun or not is also largely determined by what your coworkers are like. So this person wants to enjoy their job. This person wants to like what they do. And that's good. This person already sounds rather wholesome. This person already sounds rather nice. They want to like what they do and they want to like the people they work with. That's really thoughtful. It is. I think with those intentions, I think with those goals, with those professional objectives in terms of development, you develop yourself as a wholesome and nice person and still getting the work done, still being a consummate professional, not compromising on your integrity or your values, and you will be better for it. You will be better for it. I guess as a non sequitur, I've also heard some folks, an OG, say, it gets worse before it gets worse. But you become better for it. You are better for it. So, you train yourself, you educate yourself, not through school. You don't need some public institution telling you how to better yourself. The public institutions in general, organizations, most organizations in general have a sort of culture, a sort of agenda, organizational goals of themselves to impose upon those people inside of them, right? The same thing goes for the workplace. Granted, you want a certain degree of autonomy, a certain degree of liberty to be able to pursue your professional development in a wholesome way. And the people you work with to be nice about it, even if they have to exert a little control over you as a professional. You will allow it as a professional. That and in that way, you will work with them, not for them, at least not always. Everybody's got to start somewhere. Everyone is entry level forever, right? That's been a common theme almost every episode. I've got to repeat that. It's like a catchphrase at this point, much like being a stand up guy with the criminal mind. We're stand up guys with criminal minds. And yet, we recognize everyone starts entry level and continues entry level forever. So, if you're not working on continually bettering yourself, constantly improving yourself professionally, and developing wholesome values, you're stagnating, you're settling, you're a sitting duck. You're already dead. You don't even know it. I mean, we could bring you back. We could bring you back from the brink, but that's a job in itself. That actually may be why you're listening to this podcast. You're bringing yourself back. You've recognized where you failed, and you're doing the most to come back. To come back for that get back. There's no shame. There's no shame in waking up a little late in the game. There's no shame in waking up at all. As long as you continuously move to improve. Granted, the older you get, it doesn't necessarily mean the wiser you are, but it does mean generally the more set you are in your ways. So, If you haven't been improving, if you haven't been working on yourself for the past who knows how many years or decades, it's a little difficult. It's a reality check that a lot of folks can't cope with, that a lot of folks check out on. But to move like a corporate cowboy, you've got to recognize that corporate moves whether or not you're in it. So you've got to be a cowboy about it. Just like the stock market moves like a herd of cattle. You have to learn to wrangle it. Not by becoming one of the cattle, not necessarily by investing in cattle, if that makes sense. But you can work with corporates, with organizations on your terms, with your leverage. What you bring to every interaction, you know what that is? It's being nice. It's being wholesome. It's making offers others can't refuse. It's making those offers that are mutually beneficial with such consummate professionalism that if someone tries to take advantage of you, business already has your back. God already has your back. You just gotta have a little faith, man. You take care of business, and business will take care of you. Have I answered the question? Maybe not directly, but indirectly, what does it come down to? You really want to go through the motions and do some social research? I mean, I'm a social researcher at heart. That's what I was trained in. To learn people, to learn groups of people, to read organizations, to read between the lines when it comes to fine print. You can do the social research and find, I guess, which industry experiences the most fulfillment, which industry, after conducting exit interviews, experiences the highest degree of happiness and satisfaction, or while they're working, while they are employed. You could do all of that and then try to break into that industry, get a job there. And then heaven forbid you learn about politics. You learn about the corporate war. Ooh, there's a term you might not have been contemplating, and yet it exists all around us. The power dynamics that individuals themselves face, and that causes them to sacrifice, to compromise their wholesomeness, their niceness, to become cutthroat, to become absolutely soulless killers, just to move up the ladder. They'll do what they have to, push whatever agenda they must, whether it's subverting and perverting culture, family ideals, your family, your children, you, until they get you to sign that dotted line. But in order to do that, you either A, have to not recognize and not see through the facade, because again, we were just talking about how good people that look good, can do bad things. And if you don't see through the facade, You'll die believing you worked with wholesome people who were nice, and yet we're doing everything wrong in the world. See, that takes a higher level of thinking. That requires a higher level of preponderance, of reflection, of philosophy to identify values that overlap between humans as an individual and corporate via groups of individuals. Because I'm sure you know when you were asking, how can I work? How can I find a wholesome workplace with nice people? You're wondering, how do I stay away from assholes? How do I stay from people that are power hungry? People that are annoying or annoyed or angry or arrogant? People who are overly ambitious, I suppose. Avarice is a term that comes to mind, where they are reckless, where they see the risk and they steer towards it in a reckless manner. It's not even calculated. It's not even professional. What you're looking for is a professional workplace that adheres to human ideals, that adheres to familiar ideals. And that's tough. The corporate war that's ongoing, it's tough. That's why you have to be tough. It's only after you experience a little bit of this corporate war, it's only after you have to taste blood, whether it be your own or somebody else's. If that makes sense. Either you get beat or you have to beat. It's only after you go through some of those trials, some of those struggles, commit some of those errors even, whether or not you can go on and forgive yourself later for them. Do you grow wholesome and humble and learn to be nice? Now, I may be speaking from a place, from a position of weakness, right? Talking about struggle and whatnot. If you've never experienced struggle and you can only speak from a position of superiority, a position of power, well, shit, more power to you. One of the first episodes in this podcast, I actually broke that down, where you have more to lose in a position of power. You have more to win in a position of inferiority. So long as you're not using it as a cloak, as a shield, as a cover, so long as you're not identifying yourself as a victim, because I mean, that always comes back to you. You want to play the victim, you will be treated as such. And that goes to modern society. You want to claim the victim role, you will be treated like the victim you are, like the victim you want to be. You will be victimized. You want to work with wholesome and nice people? You must identify with wholesome and nice people. You must align your professional virtues, your professional values with those that are wholesome and those that are nice. To get even more extreme, you could squeeze a trigger with a smile on your face if you're doing it for the right reason, if it's wholesome and you're being nice about it. It sounds comical. It sounds unorthodox. It sounds unconventional. But we're criminal in our minds only. And we're stand up about what we do. Stand up guys with criminal minds. And so we move like corporate cowboys. Let's take a look at some of these comments here. Obviously, I'm going to critique some of these because it's my guess, and I haven't read any of them, it's my guess that those commenters, most commenters, are going to give their personal experience and say, I don't know, well, what are some wholesome employees that come to mind? Well, I work in a senior living care facility, and all of our coworkers are best buds with our clients, with our live-in old folks, right? But you also hear horror stories about abuse that takes place. That's not wholesome. That's not nice. Those perps, those perpetrators deserve some form of justice. They deserve it. What's another that comes to mind? A nurse? What's another? A teacher? In kindergarten, perhaps? Maybe the younger you go, the more you can nurture. And then your kindergarten colleagues, I guess, your teacher colleagues might also have that spirit to be wholesome and to be nice because they're in a position of responsibility. They're responsible for another generation. Now, notice there's a common thread of care, of nurture. That comes with emotional labor, I understand, to be wholesome, to be nice. And any one of those positions can be abused, can be subverted and perverted, as they are and they have been. It's taking place now, actively. What makes it different is you, the listener. You seeking out a cohort that is wholesome and nice. You being wholesome and nice. And discarding everything else. Now that's walking a thin line. So to prevent from venturing into the gray, which leads to a lot of first choices or last resorts, I'll just say, you be the professional. Let others bury themselves. You do it with a smile on your face. Yeah, that callback was sick. All right, let's take a look at some of these comments then. The first comment says, I once went on a date to the Museum of Natural History in New York. While looking at the dinosaur exhibits, this museum curator overheard us wondering how much of the skeletons were cast versus real bones, and proceeded to enthusiastically answer all of our questions. Plus, show us some other exhibits that she personally found interesting. Her knowledge plus excitement was so engaging, and we ended up staying a bit past the exhibit's closing time. What a fun job. Now notice, it may have been the enthusiastic and informational way that I've been presenting this material and the way I wrote that, the way I read, not wrote, because I didn't write that, the way I read that comment, the way it was written, because when you think about it, a museum curator sounds boring. Sounds boring. It wasn't the first thing that came to my mind, at least. But again, maybe my biases and preferences may be informed by other experiences, not in the realm of paleontology or natural history. So you have to ask what exactly makes it a nice job. And notice how they didn't even answer the question. The OP was asking how do they find a job with wholesome people who are nice. And what the commenter said, essentially, was that this curator's knowledge and enthusiasm gave them a feeling of enjoyment. To me, that sounds wholesome. To me, it sounds like the curator was nice with her job. And so exuded wholesomeness. And it rubbed off on these museum visitors, making them feel warm and fuzzy. At no point in time is the commenter saying, go get a job as a museum curator. They're saying, what a fun job. Do you know why? They're claiming that this is a fun job. Do you know why? Do you think every museum curator is wholesome and nice? No. This museum curator in particular is the consummate professional I was just referring to moments ago. They are wholesome and nice because they are wholesome and nice. They appear to be that way because they actually are that way. And so their job looks fun. And so why wouldn't you apply to work at that museum, the Natural History Museum in New York? What about the one in Chicago? What about the one in LA? What about the one in Seattle? You don't know. They could be utter assholes. Or, again, they could be wholesome and nice. But it's the professional that makes the profession. If you're a consummate professional and you work, you strive to develop yourself and improve yourself. With the objective, primary or secondary, as long as your work gets done, right? To be wholesome and nice, what do you think? How do you think others will view your profession? As fun, as wholesome, as the professionals working inside of it being nice. Now, that differs always. Some professions are more high strung. They attract professionals of different calibers, of different types. And at times they may incentivize going the other way, not being wholesome and nice, being more cutthroat, like I mentioned earlier. And when you're at those crossroads, that's when you make the choice. That's when you have to decide whether to compromise on your values, whether to give up and sacrifice, literally cut out being wholesome and nice for, I don't know, what they offer you, money, compensation, a promotion, a title, fame, a fucking sexual gratification, any number of things that appeal to your hedonistic side of human nature. They offer you those to break you down, to disintegrate you. And in that way, break you down as a professional and carve up your profession. Take your rights away from you, your autonomy, your liberty. You fuck yourself by not being wholesome and nice, by not standing up for wholesome values. You fuck yourself in the end. You be wholesome and nice, and you will attract others that are wholesome and nice. Now, if you have particular issues or problems dealing with people that are not wholesome and nice, then you can come to us for consulting. You see, this is where I wrap things up. You need help making your next move inside a corporate. Maybe you want to leapfrog a supervisor. Maybe you want to sink somebody's corporate career because they deserve it. And I don't mean sink as in you actively go out and do some treacherous shit in their life. No, 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 no. You stand out while they bury themselves. That type of work. That requires strategic planning. It requires logic. It requires tact. It requires a lot more information like what we usually answer in these subforums, subreddits. A lot more information, which you can definitely engage us. You can definitely contact us. Send us a DM. Subscribe to the podcast on Patreon. There's a question and answer section, exclusive content. You can set up an exclusive one-to-one session or a package of sessions. The rates are more than reasonable. The Corporate Cowboys podcast. Go look for us. Go find us. We're on Rumble. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. At Corporate Cowboys with a Z. Help us keep this thing nonprofit. Any funds you send us, besides actual paid consultations, if you're donating, if you're just regularly donating, that's going towards business expenses, legal fees, office supplies, revolvers, stuff like that, ammo, and letter openers. Take care of yourself. We'll catch up with you later.